Welcome to Outbound Money on HKIBC. I'm Chloe Fong. The rapid dismantling of China's COVID curbs has allowed people to travel and mingle freely during the Lunar New Year holidays for the first time since 2019. According to data from the Chinese Ministry of Culture and Tourism, trips taken during the 7-day period starting on January the 21st hitting 308 million, up 23% year on year. That's 90% of the amount that was taken in 2019 before the pandemic began. However, there is a risk of reigniting the Omicron wave that scorched the country in recent weeks. So how exactly is the tourism recovery on the mainland progressing, and will we see a travel industry boom in China this year? Yereth Jansen, an entrepreneur in the country with over 7 years of experience in the travel industry, joins me today to share his insights. So welcome to the show, Yereth.
Thank you very much, Chloe.
And firstly, I'm thinking, can you just have a very short introduction about yourself as well to let our viewers to know about you? And how exactly did you enter the travel industry in China?
Well, I've been in China since 2009 and started our business in Yunnan province, which is actually one of the most popular travel destinations, and was also the destination that grew the most this year during Spring Festival with the tourism numbers. So we've been here for a long time, started a business in tourism-related business. We've been doing tourism-related projects since 2016. And since 2017, I've also done projects with the UNWTO to help provinces like Yunnan and Hainan in China to build international marketing strategies.
Right. I know Yunnan province is definitely a very beautiful region in China. Being there is very, very peaceful and tranquil. And you previously, before running your current company at Darling China, you actually founded the Cloudbridge earlier in Yunnan's Kunming city. Can you also introduce a bit about the business model at Cloudbridge?
Absolutely. We actually started out as a platform for expats and for travelers called Go Kunming, basically introducing the city, introducing Yunnan as a province as well, with travel resources and just general information for foreigners for expats to live their lives here, because everything is in Chinese, and it's a difficult language to learn, of course, especially Chinese characters. So that was our starting point, and we realized very quickly that there's a big demand especially in government, to promote Yunnan to bigger audience around China, but also around the world. And Yunnan has traditionally been a province that started very early as a backpackers destination and has basically grown from there to become one of China's most popular tourism destinations, generally speaking, and also having some of the most popular destinations. So we've been helping these different destinations building websites, English language websites, doing promotional videos, helping them to manage social media, but also doing other marketing activities for them. To put things in perspective, Yunnan province is, think about it, roughly the size of France, and there's 49 million people in the province. So it's a big area. And in the north, you have the Himalayas. In the south, you're in the subtropics. So there's a big diversity of destinations as well. When we did the strategy with the UNWTO, we started that project in 2017. And when we did a 3-year strategy for the province, which had a lot of overlap with COVID. So you can imagine that these projects where we're building multi-year strategies could be very effective if the country would have stayed open, and we would have been able to implement them more effectively. So this is something that we will pick up again on this year, because now China is opening up. We're still waiting, of course, for the visa situation. But this is really the time when we can effectively start promoting places around China again to an international audience, and hopefully we can see more people come here. On a side note, even when we attract a lot of international travelers, the domestic market has grown to become so big in China that even if there's a lot of travelers from different countries around the world coming to these places, it will still be a very, very small percentage of total number of visitors.
Got
This
it.
Chinese population is so huge, and everybody's traveling.
Got it. We can talk more about the recovery later on. But before that, also tell us, were there any interesting, campaigns that worked pretty well from your perspective, over the past years with your experience in Kunming?
We have run multiple campaigns for destinations like Lijiang and Kunming. And a lot of this is also directed to like expats within China, right? So we promote to a lot of expats within the major cities in China because there's a very low barrier for them to visit. And for local destinations, these are still international travelers. They still count as inbound tourists when they do the numbers. So we call it the low-hanging fruit. People that don't have to get visas, that don't have to fly for 10, 15 hours to arrive here. And we see that these promotions are quite effective. So we do promotional videos that go out also on Facebook, also on Instagram, on YouTube. But what we also use is we use some of the Chinese channels that are built into WeChat and what people probably know outside of China, TikTok these days is called Douyin in China. So you see, so we start with low-hanging fruit, and that will also give us more organic exposure. Because the reality is that outside of China, there's very few people that know about destinations within China, except for Shanghai, Beijing, also, of course, in Xi'an, where the terracotta warriors are.
Got it. But then last year, you also founded another company called Darling China in Shanghai. What led you to make this transition or to decide to make this move?
Well, I've been working in marketing, branding, and generally the internet websites for many years. I started in Amsterdam when I was still studying in university. Part of the work that we do here in Yunnan is also doing destination branding and destination marketing. But we also realized throughout the years that there's actually a lot of brands in China that are really not that well known overseas. And what China is rapidly shifting from being the factory of the world to producing very high quality brands and products that a lot of people don't know about. So with Darling is a creative agency in New York, founded by Jeroen Boers, who used to also work at Ogilvy. And this agency has existed since 2008. So the main goal for us to set up the China company together is both to help Chinese companies just to build international brands that are lasting, brands that people will respect in 10 years from now, 20 years from now as well. And also to help destinations to really put a professional spin to building their international brands. What you see a lot with destinations in China is that they spend a lot of time and effort on building their Chinese brand, and then generally their international brand is a translation of their Chinese brand, which doesn't really work that well because the market is very different. People don't necessarily know the destinations that we're trying to promote. So you have to take a really different approach from like a cultural background and from the background of people actually not knowing these places.
Thank you very much for your thoughts, Yereth. We'll take a short break for now, but coming up next, we'll have more discussions over China's travel industry recovery, so do stay tuned. Welcome back to All About Money on HK IBC. I'm Chloe Feng. Joining us today is Yereth Jansen, the Chief Executive of Darling China, also an entrepreneur with over 7 years of experience in the travel industry in China. Welcome to the show, Yereth, and thank you very much for taking the interview with us.
Very happy to be here. Thank you, Chloe.
Earlier, we have talked about your personal experience of, navigating the travel industry in China from a foreign perspective. And now I also want to shift our focus about, the current tourism industry recovery in China because we have seen pretty strong rebound after the Lunar New Year holiday. Nationwide, according to official data, the country's tourism industry revenue hit over 70% of pre-COVID level. And trips taken during the week-long holiday hit 308 million, up 23% year-on-year. That was over 88% of the number recorded in 2019 before the pandemic began. I mean, you're in China. From your own perspective, how would you assess the current recovery status? Do you think, the country now is actually seeing a stronger than expected rebound now?
Well, expectations have been very mixed over the last 2 months, of course, because China has only canceled much of the COVID policies since last month. It's only been about a month and a half since China started opening up. And that's also why there's been massive changes in expectations. And what we've seen is that in a very short period of time, the vast majority of the Chinese population has had COVID, and the people that have been able to recover, fortunately, they have been recovered for several weeks already. So this is why we see, I think, a massive rebound. Obviously, before December, whenever we were traveling around, we had to do tests. We had to do tests before getting on planes. We had to do tests when we landed. There were a lot of places where we couldn't go to. There were lockdowns, so that made it very difficult. And so what you're seeing right now is people have mostly recovered. It's Spring Festival, which is a traditional time where people travel a lot, either to their hometown, together with their families, which is a big trend this year. People want to spend time with their families and they travel together. It's a typical revenge travel time as well.
Right.
And this is definitely what boosts the numbers in a much bigger way than what I think we will see in the next few months.
Got it. And also in Yunnan, how this province that is heavily relying on tourism industry have been coping with the COVID situation over the past 3 years as well. So how have the situation been over the past years? And a lot of people are also worried about, another wave of Omicron infection in the rural area. Do you see there is currently like another wave of infections there? How would you assess the whole situation now?
Well, I arrived back in Yunnan a few days ago. I'll be traveling to a few different places, including Lijiang and Dali, two very famous destinations. What I've heard so far is I've heard nothing about any COVID situations in these different places, in Kunming as well, the capital city. I'm not that concerned about this because in the first few days that China opened up, or let's say canceled the COVID policies, which was early December, second week of December, especially in Kunming and Yunnan, COVID was spreading really fast, a little bit like what we've seen in Beijing at the time, faster than a lot of other places, which may be related to the dry weather. It may be related to cold spells. This is hard to say. I'm not an expert on this. But we're definitely not seeing a rebound of COVID cases here right now. And Yunnan has rebounded better than almost all places. From what I've seen from the numbers now, Yunnan was second in the total number of travelers over Spring Festival, and had an increase of travelers of 244%, which is huge. And much bigger than other destinations. But yes, in the last 3 years, Yunnan has had a very difficult time. We've seen a lot of businesses close, a lot of hotels as well. Places like Lijiang, the Lijiang Old Town, is almost entirely reliant on tourists. And especially in 2020, we already saw a lot of businesses close down. And the ones that have survived, like some friends of mine run travel agencies, they had to scale down massively. If before they had smaller agencies, if before they had 20, 30 people, then over the last 3 years, they may have only had 2 or 3. And And what's happening right now is everybody's trying to scramble for staff and trying to get themselves up to capacity again. And this is a big problem. This is difficult. Just met with a friend of mine yesterday. She runs a travel agent, and they're hiring over 15 people in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, it seems to be, we've seen this kind of like labor shortage is not only in the travel industry, but also like other industry that is related to travel or tourism as well. For example, the catering, retails, like they're also having this kind of difficulties in hiring enough staff. Or the aviation industry, we see a lot of airlines, they are also scrambling to hire staff as well. And also, you talk about how Yunnan province actually has been the second top destination during the Lunar New Year holiday travel season, right? So other than Yunnan, what are the other regions in China that are quite popular in terms of the visitor numbers?
So the top destination was Sichuan, Sichuan province, where Chengdu, the city Chengdu is, and also where the pandas are from, which is probably their most famous icon, and which is also used as a China icon, of course.
Right.
They saw almost 54 million people. Well, it's not really people. So in China, we use a different measure, which in Chinese is called a 人次, and I loosely translate it as people times.
Right.
The difference with people is, so if you measure people, you try and find an accurate way of measuring the number of people that are actually coming, right? The number of individuals. While people times, as we translate it, is more like they will have many different ways of measuring, like checking into a hotel, buying a ticket, taking a flight. These are all counted within the people times. So the numbers are a little bit confusing maybe when we look at international numbers that usually try to focus on the actual number of people that are arriving. But relatively speaking, you can see that, for instance, Sichuan, almost 54 million, Yunnan, 45 million. Then you have Jiangsu at 41 million, Henan province at 34 million almost. So these are some of the most popular provinces. However, when you look at these other provinces, the increase compared to last year is only about 24%, 21%, 28%, roughly around these numbers, while Yunnan is at 244%. And one of the reasons for this is that last year, a few different places in Yunnan, which are actually quite far from a lot of the destinations, like 500-600 kilometers, they had continuous outbreaks and lockdowns, which affected the willingness for people to travel to Yunnan. And Yunnan is quite far. So in Sichuan, you also have a lot of people, much bigger population than in Kunming. So they will have a lot of local travel as well.
In some way, we can also interpret that it's also because the previous condition was just so dire that we have seen this huge rebound now. But in terms, like also Yereth, so what does all of these numbers mean for the timeline for the country to recover to its pre-COVID levels?
I think that may still need another year, maybe even 2 years. A full recovery to 2019 numbers is going to take a little longer, I think, because the economy will also take some time to recover. Capacity will take time to recover. And I think revenge travel is really one of the key words here right now. I mean, obviously, it becomes easier to travel around China right now. Soon, hopefully, we'll be able to see inbound tourism as well. We're already seeing some outbound tourism, but to really fully recover, I'm expecting that in the next few months we're going to see a lot less in terms of recovery, because people are willing to spend as soon as they regain that freedom. But after that, they will consider their financial situation, right? And how well is the economy recovering? This is a much bigger topic that we'll have to observe over the next year, I think. But what is also the case is that now that we can travel freely again, a lot of business travel is going to become easier as well. There's been so many projects in many different industries over the last years that have been postponed, canceled, or have just run into difficulties because there were lockdowns or because there were outbreaks, or because people weren't able to travel around. And that goes for our companies as well. We've been affected by this too. So even if the economy isn't immediately going to recover to 2019 levels, we will still see a steady increase. And I think we can be optimistic about where we're going right now. I'm definitely optimistic about our different businesses for this year and for the 2-3 years to come.
Got it. And also in terms of the outbound travel, because pre-pandemic, before the COVID situation, China was the top exporter of travelers in the world. And now that the country is opening up, we're also seeing a lot of travelers are going out to other destinations to travel as well. How would the country's reopening also impact the global travel recovery at some level?
This is going to be a very important factor. In the short term, what we'll see is that Southeast Asia and nearby destinations are going to benefit the most. And we've already seen that during the last 2 weeks. So people have been traveling to Thailand, to Singapore, to Bali. Bali has actually seen an increase of 3,000%, I think. I mean, obviously, not many people were traveling before, but the nearby destinations are going to see the biggest benefit in the short term. But yes, there's a lot of people that are just waiting to be able to travel to Europe, to the United States, to other countries around the world. So yes, we'll see an increase. Also, the UNWTO has already adjusted their projections based on China opening up, which is good as well. Last year, worldwide tourism market has already recovered really well. And for 2023, the UNWTO is predicting that we will see 80 to 95%, of pre-pandemic levels. And these adjustments are partly based on China opening up.
And also you mentioned the inbound travel now is still not ideal yet. So what do you think the country should do to speed up its momentum of getting the full recovery as it expected?
There's a few things that we have very little control over, which is, of course, the visa situation. Business travel visas are now available in multiple countries already for China. We hope that after we just passed Spring Festival, we will see the 2 sessions happening soon in China. Hopefully after this, we will be able to get tourist visas again to come to China. This is something that we cannot predict right now, but we hope that's going to happen, and people are assuming it will. We also see that the tourism boards around the country of different cities and provinces are quite optimistic and are basically increasing their marketing budgets again for the international market, which means that they are assuming that we will see some level of recovery of inbound travel this year. However, the China Tourism Academy is only expecting about 20 million, let's stick to people times or trips in the inbound market, right, which is still much lower than pre-COVID levels, which was at 145 million. So the inbound tourism market, we will not see a very quick recovery.
So thank you very much, Yereth. That's Yereth Jansen, the Chief Executive of Darling China. Until the next time, please have a good night.